Todd and Rob in the afternoon.
Afternoon delight.
With Todd and Rob. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if we had a production team just like Podcast Insider, I mean, not Podcast Insider, like the Podcasting 2.0 show, we would have had Dave in there as part of the intro today as well. You know,
right?
Yeah, your army of contributors over there. But hey, Rob, welcome to the show, and go ahead and introduce our guest as well.
Yeah, it's great to be back doing the show, Todd. I appreciate it, and yeah, we're really lucky to have Mr. Dave Jones with us from the Podcast Index.org project, and he's been working hard over the last, I don't know, it's been a couple of years now on this new namespace podcasts. And so, you know, we're hoping to get the whole rundown on it and to share it with you about, you know, what the future could look like for RSS and podcasting.
Will look like, Rob.
That's right. What it will look like.
Yes.
With or without.
You know, I think for a lot of people it's new, right? So this is something that all of us want, or, you know, a lot of us want. It's just a matter of getting it done, letting people know about it, getting the word out about it. And that's why Dave's here. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. It's great being on with you guys. We should probably, you know, Ed Ryan is down there in near Tampa.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably, you know, give a shout out to those guys. That's a pretty scary situation down there.
Yeah, 600,000 people so far without power. My daughter left Tampa Sunday and went to South Carolina to stay with her brother.
Okay.
So I think Tampa's looks like they're going to not get the worst of it. So, but it's a little further south. But yeah, it's bad. So, you know, of course, you know, there's a lot of rain going to happen for the rest of the southeast over the next couple of days too.
Yeah, like 10 to 15 inches or something like that. That's nuts, man.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, that's a lot of water to go. It's got to go somewhere. But so yeah, if you are in the Florida area and you are without power, well, you're obviously listening to this later, and we hope that you weathered the storm. And if you're down there live, then still online, yeah, thoughts and prayers with you. You know, I went through a typhoon in Guam. Oh my God, 95, something. It's called Typhoon Omar. You can Google it. And super typhoon. So that's bigger than a Cat 5. And the little propeller at the weather station departed the building at 1:56. So
yeah, that's like Chernobyl
when they asked the whole experience, right? Is that what you're saying?
When they asked what the radiation was, and it was like, well, we don't know. It's our things only go up to 10,000, so it's somewhere north of 10,000.
Right. And I lived on the beach, but Guam has a reef, so we didn't get storm surge. The reef protected us from getting storm surge. We got a lot of waves up on the yard, but nothing like you would expect what they're going to get in Florida. And but I lived right on the beach, and when I first moved in there was a closet that was full of coffee cans, like Folgers, Maxwell House, the old metal ones, you know, that you used to get, not how it comes now in plastic bags. And I said, what is this? How come all these coffee cans? Oh, we want you to contribute because when there's a typhoon coming, everyone on the first floor takes their furniture and sets it all up on these coffee cans. And I kind of like laughed at them, right? Well, when the storm was coming, we did that. I had 10 inches of water running through my house.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but since all the furniture was raised, actually the bottom of one couch got a little bit of wet. But other than that, just some new grout, and we were good. But in 37 days without power, so not my idea of a good time. And
37 days without power.
Wow.
No place in the United States would survive more than 72 hours. I mean,
yeah. And we were on the same line as the hospital for water, so we had water the entire time, so we could at least take a cold shower. And when it's 80, 90 degrees every day, that was a godsend. And they had riots around ice trucks. An ice truck would be going down the road, and people would do a U-ey right in the middle of traffic and follow the ice truck just to get ice. So yeah, it was kind of. Now I was in the military, so I was able to go on base and have food, and and at least have something to eat that is not cooked on a barbecue. But yeah, it was crazy. Hey, before we kick off here, let's get into our boost. And I don't have any fancy boost thing like Adam does, so I have to do my own. But hey, big thanks to Scott's Cora for sending 50,000 sats. He says, hey, looking forward to hear that Dave guy on today's episode. Pew pew, Scott from Talking Beards podcast-www.talkingbeards.com. Go podcasting, Todd. I will email you my address privately. Yes, 50,000 sats, and you get a care sticker package from us. You got 3,002 sats from Mike Dell. Dave Jones, the Pod Sage. That's interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that sometime. How you got that nickname, or I'm sure Adam assigned it to you. But got 333 sats from Mitch, 1,000 sats from Mortz from Albie, another 1,333 sats from Mortz from Albie. Says OP3 is great innovation for podcasters. Thanks for picking up this topic, Mortz from Albie. And then that was a week ago when you sent us 21,000 sats there, Dave. So we appreciate that from before. But anyway, hey, before we get into the meat today, you guys been following the dust up over iHeart and some others and doing the little tricky D by buying listens?
Yeah, I've been following it, Todd. Yeah, I've been commenting about it too, about the unethical practice that it is, and how this is just an extension of what we've seen in the past, right, Todd? This is not a new thing in podcasting. It
used to be done by individual podcasters, not by big corporations that were buying listens. And I guess in all honesty, if they want to buy listens, let them buy listens, but don't run ads in those listens.
Right.
If you're running ads in those listens and you're billing for those ads, in my personal, Todd Cochran's personal opinion, not to be associated with my company, but my personal opinion, that's borderline fraud.
I think you would have a hard press case to say that it isn't, Todd.
If I was a media buyer, I would be on the phone. I think, I can't go into the history, but probably, I have to be real careful. A number of years ago, I did an audit on a company because we were asked to by the media buyer. And there was some monkey business that had happened, and I won't go into the monkey business, but they had to write a $6 million plus check back to that advertiser for that monkey business.
Mm-hmm.
And there we go. There we got the boost, 50,000 sats from Adam Curry. Give me my sticker. All right, Adam, send me that mailing address.
Right.
So I was a little shocked to begin with, then not surprised, and then finally I'm thinking. So I called Lena and I said, "Tell me, please tell me that our fraud system would have picked this up." And we talked about it for a while, and more than likely, and again, we're going to pull some data and we're going to go dig through our stuff to see if we can see anything. We got to do some experiments. We got to play with the app. We got to play those. We got to, the problem is I don't have the log data from them, but we're going to try to figure out what the user agent for that app is. If there isn't a user agent, which I doubt,
I guarantee you it's Apple Core Media. Or some
I
version
bet you
of
it
that.
is too.
It may be hidden from being able to see.
So
it's distinction.
It's
right.
probably Apple Core Media. So we have another part of our system that when all of a sudden we start seeing a lot of short plays. In other words, it's just like someone's doing a click farm type of action and then moving on. And this is what the activity would look like by supposedly playing 20 seconds of the audio and then kicking them into the game. There is going to be a certain amount of that will be preloaded, but I'm going to go look, because usually that will stick out like a sore thumb because we can see in a shows normally run a certain ratio of completes. to partials, and when it busts that threshold, we get a ding ding ding. We get a notice. So we haven't got any of those notices, but I'm going to go and do some more investigation. But
so what you would only get those notices on at Blueberry if one of your customers went and paid for this.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that seems. I wonder how. What I could not glean from the article is how widespread this is about, like how, because it just said I think like a podcast networks or something like that. It was sort of vague, and it mentioned iHeart.
Yeah, and there was one Bloomberg show, and it was actually Bloomberg that was doing the reporting,
and the New York Post,
Post. So I don't measure any of those shows, but here's what I would typically do, and we get alerts from time to time on shows that are doing stupid stuff. Someone buys a click farm in India or something like that. We will email the podcaster and say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
And it's like getting that letter from the ISP in the mail about, "Hey, you seem to be running torrents, and downloading movies."
And oftentimes we'll never get a reply, but all of a sudden this activity will stop. And I'll say, okay, let's go ahead and, let's put that in the denial list. And, we'll look for this activity again. And, maybe we list those specific, of course, you can't list IPs because IPs change all the time. But you can filter on activity. But all I can say is there's probably going to be some significant discussions. Matter of fact, I know there's one Slack channel where there already is a lot, and I can't say what's being said in that Slack channel, but Sounds Profitable is in there, I'm in there, and, some other folks. So this is unacceptable.
Yeah, Todd, I think that they also alluded in some of the coverage on this that the player that does this is, I guess, obtaining a minute worth of data. So it'll pass
the IB
the IAB filter of a minimum of 1 minute of data.
It depends on each app is a little bit different and how much they'll cache up. Again,
it's the speed of the connection too.
It's speed of the connection. There's a whole bunch of variables, and that's something we had to work for years at looking at each individual app. Some of them grab more, some grab less. So there's not a one size fits all on how much is byte chunked up, and so we're gonna look and see if we can find any of this activity. If anybody knows, okay, we had a lot of people that listen to this show, a lot of people that are in the measurement industry. If you have any info, like any type of user agent information that's outside of Apple Core Media or something like that, I would love to have that info. Feel free to email me, and just send it to my personal address, geeknews@gmail.com, where, and just, Rob and I love these kinds of little juicy tidbits.
Well, we can add those to the block list, right? That's the idea.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, but I might spend a little money to figure it out. Because
this is outside. Like, I think it's a related thing, but this is another example of something. What I've been fighting the last couple of days is cleaning up the index from, and I know y'all seen it, cleaning up the index from all these free movie download guys. And so, it's the same. It's the return of the same people. I'm sure that did the escort services, the Bangladesh, escort services and stuff like that. So there's these, just for completeness sake here. So there's people that want to game the Google PageRank SEO juice. Yep. And they will create a phony podcast, and they'll throw using the hosting services free 7-day or 14-day trial period. Yep. Create a phony podcast, upload one episode, put a huge description with a bunch of links back to their site in it, and all they want really is the podcast page, the HTML version of the page, and they'll create hundreds of these things so that they can get Google to see a bunch of link backs, juice them up in the SEO. And so there's the new flavor of the month of this is these free movie download services that have local latest hit movies or whatever. Adult services and free movies are the big things right now. Yeah, and so we've been cleaning. I've been cleaning those up the last couple of days and notifying all the hosting services. I'll say, here's a big batch of URLs. FYI, you've got a bunch of these on your site. Just giving them a heads up, and then But what I'm thinking you are talking about these plays through the gaming apps. It seems like a similar thing, and what I mean is, it seems like a similar thing in the way that we could, as an industry, in an open way, develop some machine learning models and that kind of thing that would spot these sort of shenanigans. So I would the index is perfectly positioned to see these things because we ingest everything we see. And so when we see, like with pod ping, we get a pod ping about a new episode that's just been published. Well, we get that for new feeds too. So we see these things, they pop into the index. We could just, as I find them, we could just route them to this open machine learning model and be constantly training it. And so then we could automatically notify, or the hosting companies could hook in and pre-test, with this open learning system. They could pre-test their feeds as they're doing being signed up for trials. I think these things are good when they're discovered, because then I think everybody in the industry can do something. Like if we can find some of these people that are doing some of these shows that are doing these game app download shenanigans, we could pump some of that through OP3, let everybody see the log data as it comes through, and then build a model off of that. I think it's a pretty good opportunity, actually.
Yeah, and there's really, from my perspective, because I'm looking at the onboarding report every day, and I'm going through, I'm like, oh, here we are. There's 5. Click, click, click. Cancel, 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 cancel. And block. So
I can tell you, Todd, that you're not the only one doing that by hand.
Yeah.
A lot of the hosting companies are manually having to take care of this.
So it's been a conversation, and I probably shouldn't talk about this here, but we've actually we're very, very close to, because some stuff comes in, I'm like, is that real, or is that someone that's set something up to use next week? And there's this borderline whether or not, okay, is this going to be a real show or not? We might switch back and require a credit card to be put on, because once you do that, they're gone. Yeah. They don't do anything. So it's basically, because we're giving that free 30-day trial, no credit card required. That's where we never had this problem before, when we'd give them a 30-day trial with a credit card required. And what it really does is that person that's on the fence, we will lose some onboarders that would potentially be customers, because they're like, I don't want to get my credit card, because then most of these companies make it painful to cancel. They're afraid they're going to have to get on the phone and spend 2 hours with someone, begging to cancel the account. I can't make it clear to them, hey, there's just a little thing on our box that says cancel, and you're done. It's cancel, yes, put your password in, you don't have to call nobody. But they don't know that when they're onboarding. So if we make them enter a credit card, then they say, let me go over to somewhere else that doesn't require a credit card instead. But so for me, I've left it open at this point, and just we're manually dealing with these knuckleheads that are coming on and creating single episodes.
I cleared almost 5,000.
Wow.
Yesterday.
Wow.
That's across 7 different hosting companies.
Yeah, I've seen the number in the index has been dropping over the last couple of weeks pretty significantly, over the last week or so.
Yeah, I can tell you what that's about. That's worth talking about, because one thing that we've always done, or one thing I've always done, is that I have been a real hands-off approach on feeds that have iTunes IDs. So we don't pull from Apple, but we get a lot of inputs from other directories and apps that do. So, like, for instance, Marco at Overcast, he syncs his database with us on a minute by minute. So we're getting, and his is all iTunes. So we get these iTunes feeds, like, sort of in a roundabout way. And so I've always taken a hands-off approach and said, okay, if it's got an iTunes ID, I'm really not going to police it very much, because a lot of the apps are going to expect if they look for this ID, they're going to expect to find it. And even if it goes 404, I'm going to leave it alone because it may come back. Sometimes people mess up their feed, and we give a grace period and that sort of thing. So finally, that I've really never touched those very much. So I finally said, okay, Index been around a couple of years. Let's just get in there and start cleaning up some old iTunes ID feeds that we never really police. And so we looked at it and said, okay, if it hasn't published a show in a year and it's 404, I'm just going to remove it. That removed like 100,000 feeds within 2 weeks. It ran for a while. So that's what that was. Yeah.
We actually have. I've got a intern. He's not even an intern anymore. He's already graduated college. He's getting his PhD.
You have an intern? I want an intern.
Hey, come on up. Well, we'll intern you. We got a guy that's going for his PhD, and he worked for us for several years, couple of seasons as an intern. He says, "Hey, I'm just running." He's doing this big doctorate on. I don't know. He's running big computer models on supercomputers, and he said, I set the thing to go, and I have to wait 5 hours for the results to come back." He says, "I'm just hanging out. So what have you got for me?" And I said, "Well, I have some directory work that needs to be done." So, we brought him back on, and he's actually not an intern. We're putting him on part-time. And so he's been going through my directory and cleaning things up. And thus the Mastodon messages I've been sending you about the endpoint and some of that stuff that we were hoping that you could make a minor change on. I don't know if it's minor, at least I think it's minor, but because we've been basically doing the same thing. We're cleaning up our directory, and then what we're going to do here very, very soon is we're going to suck in the master, and then start pulling you for the new shows to keep ours current. So the cleanup thing is a pain because, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to end up with dupes, duplicate listings. Some people started a show and they say, "Oh, I didn't want to do it this way," and they create another podcast. It ends up being to just clean up the internal directory on our side is it's kind of
say this.
It's kind of scary.
You're going to get mad at me, but WordPress is the worst about duplicates because it has 10 different URLs for the same feed.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we'll end up with like 10 versions of this thing. We've evolved to get a lot better with the deduping. We've got about 3 dedupe scripts that run hourly and look for things, and it looks for hash collisions. We do some content hashing from things that are stable in the index about the feed, things that don't typically change. So we have some hashing. We look at image, the art, and we don't look at title collisions because there's just too much. It's not useful.
Too much.
It's not useful. And so the dupes have become less and less and less, and we integrated that into the actual parser so that it catches it faster in the process when it comes in. So I think we're doing a better job of that. The WordPress ones are still the ones that are complicated. And as you know, the iTunes stuff where people will set a redirect, but then never change the feed URL in iTunes. And you're like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah. We had talk to a client, a new client that we're stealing from somebody. He's got 120 shows, and he's been using taxonomy podcasting on his WordPress site and a puller. So basically they're hosting with somebody, and they've been to update their website. They've been using a plugin to pull the RSS feed to update their listings. And we're like, oh my God, actually custom post types. And I'm like, I'm like, why did you do that? Because for us to migrate his 120 shows with custom post types, put this way, my poor support team are going to be, with that client for probably 8 hours one day. Just,
Are you going to have to write an exporter?
We know we've got it. It's already built into the system, so we can handle them, those custom post types. Okay. But it's going to be about marrying up that data that's already in the system. And so, and I'm like, if you're running WordPress, categories are great. Don't use taxonomies and don't do custom post types. Just do category podcasting. If you're going to have more than one show, if you're using WordPress and you have a single show, don't create a category podcast. Just create your single show. But people do all kinds of crazy things. Of course, we made PowerPress so that it would support people that had 120 shows on a single site. And you're right, it can get ugly. But I think for us, what we've tried to really do is make sure that feed is distinct, but some of the plugins don't play so nice. It makes it look like there's a podcast feed, like you said, when they have not assigned it at least in our plugin, you have to, there we go. We have to designate a category specifically. So 500 sats. Just wanted to hear a live pew pew. There you go. Thanks, Mike.
So are we still having an issue? And this is a little bit of a derivative topic from what we were just talking about, but feeds that are getting cloned or duplicated by people that want to take, let's say, the serial feed and want to create it, duplicate it in a free account. I mean, are you seeing those type of things still go on, Dave?
I've seen less of that. I see
You've seen less of
that
it?
was a problem for a while, and that seems to have dropped off. And now I think it's because it's not as much of a sure thing. It's just not that easy to drive traffic to some new feed. And Anchor stopped publishing directly to iTunes.
Yay!
Which helps.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think a lot of that stuff from what I can tell, has fallen off. And the only ones that we see now are people that are directories that inadvertently do that. So there was one, what's the name of it? Hakawati or something, Hakawati. They were republishing they were rehosting feeds, and they didn't realize what was happening there.
Yeah.
So we just had to write rules to exclude that. But
you should, when you see that happen, make sure you email me, because I like to put those kinds of folks on blast, because that's hijacking feeds without proper knowing that's what you're doing.
That's like what Castbox did a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't happen very often, but I love it when it does, because I have fun with it.
Yeah, but it's good that's less of a problem. I think everybody has switched to the SEO spam stuff now. It must be an easier moneymaker. I don't know.
And what's funny is we actually do a little trick within our directory. Until you're up and paid as we basically depreciate. As a matter of fact, if you're on WordPress and have an account with us, we make sure that our directory listing is depreciated so that it doesn't get as much Google juice. So good luck to those folks. If they want to come over and they continue to do it on Blueberry, which we've seen some of those, then just let you know that until you're reviewed, your program or your page link is depreciated. And there's a few ways we can do that. And I'm not going to, it's like not be in the index and not be in a few places, and Google doesn't take that page's seriousness until you say, okay, you can elevate it and allow it to be indexed. So,
Rob, does Libsyn have a free trial account period? Are y'all seeing the same SEO spam
We
stuff?
only offer, it's kind of two things right now, but we generally just offer, let's say, up to 2 months free on a paid account. So, and then we do offer some free hosting over with the Libsyn Studio platform, but that's kind of a creation tool.
But they have to enter the credit card though, Rob, to get that free trial.
Yes, on the up to 60 days free on
yes.
Libsyn.
So you won't have that issue.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
That's the reason I asked, because I've not been seeing very much of that on Libsyn. If I can't remember any. And what I would love to see.
We don't make it easy for people to try and do this kind of stuff. Right.
What I would love to see is a tag or some kind of specifier within the feed that denotes that this feed is a free or a trial period feed of some sort.
That's
interesting. It's a good point. That could be another namespace extension here.
Yeah. If that was tagged in a way, it would make it very easy to spot these things just right out of the gate.
I was on the phone yesterday with Ted at Apple on some other stuff, and he talked about a tag that oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. The guy that's over at RSS.com is a text field tag.
Yeah, like a sort to do verification.
Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've got some traction on that. I think we're going to do a little sort of if you want to get into that, I think we're going to do like a dual strategy.
Wow.
Where we do.
I feel pierced, Todd.
I think we're going to do like a dual strategy there. The longer term vision for the verify tag is to have a way to do sort of a handshake between the app and the hosting company, so that you can say where you can verify that you are the owner of the feed, or you can verify that you are a subscriber to a subscription feed. So this is eventually going to evolve into an open subscription mechanism. So you can say, well, hey, here's a feed and I've paid for this, so I should get the content. I should get these enclosures delivered to my app. And then the app can say, well, okay, well, we need to prove it. And there will be, as part of the verification tag, there will be a callback URL within the tag. And the app can bounce you out in a web view to prove, to that callback URL. It will sign a JWT, a JSON Web Token, send that back to the app and say, okay, yeah, this person did pay. Then that's proof of subscription there. And then you can, and then the app can send the token back when it requests the enclosure to say, okay, I'm a valid subscriber. That's one version of this, but the ownership verification, where you're verifying that you are the owner of the feed, could take that same form, and eventually I think that's what we want to do. But as an interim step, I think what we're going to do is create just the verify tag as an empty where the node value of the tag is just a text field where you can put your tag in there, your code in there.
Why not make that so it's a free form that we can put anything in there? So in other words, right. I can tell a podcaster, okay, here, put this code in your but the problem is not everyone's going to adopt it. So there's going to have to be an alternate way for those that can say, please put this in your verify tag or whatever we're going to call this, or this free form tag. With your provider, so I can guarantee this is your show, or to prove ownership. But we could also do that for a whole bunch of other things, like you said. But I think a freeform tag, just to put whatever we want in there, that as a hosting provider, I can say, okay, and I want you to prove this is your podcast. Put in 89672, and then we'll go pull your feed again and validate that's you.
Yeah, we talked about it at Podcast Movement a little bit, and what we came up with Ted was that we could just do sort of like the tag would mimic like what a text record field is in DNS.
DNS, just exactly. Text
free
record.
form.
Yeah,
and that's a simple tag. I mean, that's just
easy.
a dead simple tag to have. Yeah, and then the more complicated stuff, the stuff that requires the handshake, that can come later. So this will solve an immediate problem.
So, suggestion for the what do you want to call this? I make a motion for the boardroom. On Friday to move that up into the
it's Robert's Rules of Order, so you need a second.
I third it.
Okay. So Rob gets the third. Yes, we'll bring it up in the board meeting.
All right,
and
so
that'll be Pimp 6, podcast improvement proposal.
So, and I think that's going to help with the emails going away and the RSS feeds too. It doesn't matter if you're coming from somebody else that's not participating. Then we'll say, okay, then you need to put this code in your latest episode or something post, so we can know where to find it and pull it. But
people are doing it already. You just need a place to put it that's not in the show notes.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of goofy to just stick a random code in the show notes.
If I do it, Buzzsprout does it, and 4 or 5 others. But if I get someone coming from Anchor, they're not going to do it. So I'm going to have to say, okay, prove that this is. Give me your validation,
Yeah, they don't do much of anything anyway.
So I did have before we get into the whole taxonomy of Podcast 2.0 in the namespace, how many dead shows are there in there for Anchor? How many have you excluded? What I thought it was probably
how many
close.
Were there, Todd?
Well, how many? I'm expecting there was like 1.5. My guesstimate was there 1.5 million dead shows.
Right.
Well, I killed 800,000 in one day last year, so that'll tell you one thing. And nobody even noticed. We had not one single comment about it. So I think we have about we have close to oh gosh, I think we have like, last time I checked, it was like 2.5 million
that are active.
No. That's total. So I guarantee you, it's up probably close to 2.8 now. It's getting close. It's probably getting close to 3 million, and of those, like 1.7 are active.
Wow, that's higher than what I would have thought.
Let me clarify about what I mean by active. Okay, I don't mean they're publishing episodes, because that number is closer to like 150,000.
Oh, what
I mean is that when I say active, I mean they met the baseline minimum criteria to be called a podcast.
Right.
Because those 800,000 that we killed, those were shows that had like
two
episodes of one. Yeah, one of which the episode was somebody making mouth noises. Like they didn't even meet the minimum criteria. Yes,
right,
exactly.
Right.
There's hundreds of thousands of those on in Anchor. So I'd say, I think last time I checked, it was like 150,000 that were like actively publishing an episode. And within that group, I don't know how much of that was like new podcasts versus established ones. So I don't know what the number is now, but it's big, very big.
So if you've been listening to this show and you're thinking, what is this Podcast 2.0 stuff all about? Podcasting. Daniel says he's going to get a quarter every time I say Podcast 2.0, but
right.
Excuse me, Podcasting 2.0. I think that we want to. You and Adam gave a great presentation at Podcast Movement, and
thank you.
And most people weren't there, and they did not get to see this deck. I'd like to have you essentially do the 10 or 15 minutes that you did at PM, and I'll act as a moderator here. Let's see if I can bring this up and flip the right switch.
Yeah, Todd, let me paint the picture a little bit about why this, and Dave, you jump in as well. And okay. There's been talk in the industry about RSS, right? So, and criticism of RSS as being not a technology platform that has had a lot of innovation or improvement or progression or those type of things. And there's some in the industry that would like to get rid of RSS. And so this is an effort to, kind of show a larger number of people what is actually going on with RSS and what the potential opportunity is for us as we look to the future. And I'm excited about a lot of the stuff that's in this, and I would love to see more and more companies embrace all this, Libsyn included. So, the Podcasting 2.0 initiative on your slide, Dave, says preserve, protect, and extend the open podcasting ecosystem. So that is a great kind of tagline for what you're doing. So go ahead and jump in and tell us, your side of the story. That's kind of how I perceive it, and why this is important for us to consider as we look to the future.
Yeah, I guess, from the ethos of Podcasting 2.0 is pretty simple. I mean, it's really that mission statement. It's to preserve, protect, and extend open podcasting, because you can do podcasting in a million different ways. You can have all kinds of private APIs, and you can think of a whole bunch of different ways to do it. But the way that it was invented, and the way that it's been done, and the way that it continues to be done is the way that's the best. It's the way that's open. There's really only one other technology that is like podcasting, and that's the open web. It's a beautiful thing that nobody wants to lose. People make lots of money off of the open web. It's not like being open means you can't have a business around it. So it is the most beautiful way that we've seen to decentralize and distribute media in a way that preserves the privacy and the ownership of people over their content, preserves the listener's ability to listen to whatever they want without an intermediary or a third party dictating to them what they can and cannot listen to. It's something that we don't want to lose. So that's really the ethos there. And in order to do that, what we figured was, we have to have features that are not just on par or at parity with what closed platforms can do. We have to be able to move beyond them and move faster and make better features. And I think that's what we're doing. I mean, so the first thing that we went over, like in the slide deck there at Podcast Movement, was PodPing, and that's something that PowerPress released support for yesterday, with Blueberry doing the work there. And PodPing is a solution to the is there anything new there yet? Are we there yet, Mom? Problem. It's RSS, as everybody knows, is you check a feed thousands of times a day just to check and see if it possibly updated once. And so it's a humongous waste of resources. It's a waste of time. I mean, we as every directory does, we have to run tons of expensive server horsepower in order to just check these feeds all day long, every day. It's a huge waste. And so PodPing said, okay, how could we do this better? There was a solution called WebSub, and it's still obviously functional, but WebSub solved it in a way that puts an intermediary between the subscriber and the publisher. And so what you have, it's a server-based technology where you essentially have a server that sits in between, and the hosting company tells the WebSub hub server that it has published new content for a certain feed. And then everybody who wants to know if that feed has updated subscribes to the WebSub hub server. And the theory is whenever the publisher says that they've updated, then anybody who's subscribed will get a notification. And that works, except there's lots and lots of subscription activity going on. You have to keep subscribing to these things over and over and over. And so like one of our servers at Podcast Index does nothing but resubscribe to WebSub subscriptions all day long. Every second of every day, it's just resubscribing to WebSub. We have 4 million feeds. And so if you do the math on that, that's, thousands and thousands and thousands of resubscriptions. And if you miss the ping from the WebSub hub, if it tries to ping you and you happen to have an outage, or there was an internet blip or something like that, you'll just never know. So we've flipped that around, and with PodPing, we're using a public blockchain. And so the hosting company or the self-hoster, whatever that is, the hosting platform that controls the feed, it knows when the feed updated. And what it does is it writes that update to the blockchain. It's a public blockchain, and it becomes immutable and permanent. So every 3 seconds, a new block is added to the chain, and those blocks will contain all of the RSS feed URLs that have updated. That the beautiful part of that is that you, as a subscriber, somebody who wants to know when feeds updated, you don't have to keep servers up and running all the time. All you do is watch the blockchain, and when you see that a feed URL comes through that you're interested in, you know that it just updated. That means that you don't have to wait to be notified and worry about whether your server is going to catch that properly. And if you reboot your server, if you have downtime or an outage or something like that, when your system comes back up, you just go back in time to right before the outage, pick up from that block and read forward. So you never miss any updates. It's not. It's a public permanent blockchain. So that was the whole idea there, and that idea of PodPing, that platform becomes the basis for stuff that we do in the future with other tags like the live item tag and cross app comments and the music and the music and medium tags. These things become reliant on the things that PodPing can do.
Can you share, Dave, a little bit about your thoughts on the blockchain? I think a lot of
Mhm.
people are kind of confused on that and how that might work here. So it might be good to have that. And I know that some people are kind of scared to use that term because it's had some baggage associated with it.
Yeah, I think there's confusion, and there always has been, about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and people consider them to be the same thing, and they're not. A blockchain is just a linked list of data blobs, so it's a cryptographically secure ledger, essentially, and you don't have to have a cryptocurrency tied to it. The blockchain we chose to use here is something called the Hive Blockchain. It's a proof of stake chain, which means it's not processor or energy intensive. It's a staking chain. It has there's no like power based mining with GPUs and this kind of thing.
It's eco-friendly. It's what Ethos just switched to.
Yes, eco-friendly, exactly.
Right.
So and it's very fast. It's every 3 seconds. So that's the thing to know about. Blockchain is one of those things we've been hearing about for years, and it's sort of like a problem looking for a solution. A solution looking for a problem. And it's like it makes everybody's head spin because they're like, there's no use for a blockchain. We can always do something better with a real database. And 90% of the time that's true. But every now and then you run across a use case where a blockchain is actually the perfect solution. And that is like for cryptocurrencies, it actually happens to be the perfect solution. And that's why it was chosen. For this use case, it's also the perfect solution because it's public, it's immutable, it's cryptographically secure, and it lets everybody participate in a way that makes sense and is eco-friendly. There's nothing else could do that.
So a blockchain is really just a list of items, not unlike what an RSS feed is, right?
Yeah, imagine 10 million RSS feeds cryptographically linked together, and you got a blockchain. It's like taking all the records of a database and laying, sort of conceptually laying them out end to end. If you're familiar with the term a time series database, it's more like that than a traditional database. But
There's
it fits the use case perfectly.
There's one thing I keep hitting my team with is the rules and the concept behind the rules of podcasting 2.0. And really I don't know if we want to call it the mission statement or the value upon which you want to do. And you sum it up real easy here in your demo, in your deck. And can you talk about the 3 rules?
Oh yeah, sure. That was the stuff that we came up with, sort of as a concept more than even spoken, was never leave the app. And so any feature that we create, any tag or ability, we want it to be something where the podcast app, the player app, can do it itself. We want to provide a feature where the app can implement it, and you never have to bounce the listener out to some website or some other place. So that was sort of rule number 1. Rule number 2 is the feed is the source of truth. And that means anytime that something happens, and we'll see this when we talk about the live item tag, anytime something happens and the player gets a signal or some sort of indication that something has happened with this podcast, if it doesn't say that in the feed, then it's ignored. Or if in the index, if I flag a feed with something, like somebody says, hey, can you change such and such about my feed? And I say, yeah, sure, I'll go in there and change that for you. Well, if the feed comes through, the next time we poll it, and that feed has something that conflicts with what I just did, the feed's going to win. The feed is always the source of truth. So no matter what the app thinks is going on or the platform thinks is going on, the feed wins always.
I guess there was only 2 things. I thought there was 3 for some reason.
We
point,
can make up a third one.
My point to the team was we got to keep the listener in the app. Got to keep the listener in the app, and really, if you're a podcaster, if we give them all the abilities to do everything in the app, we keep the app developer happy, interact with the host, all that things make sense. As soon as we drive them somewhere else, guess what? we lose them from being in the app and enjoying our content.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look at the closed platforms. Look at YouTube, Spotify. They don't ever want you leaving their app.
They don't want you leaving.
That's anathema. They never want that. And the same thing, we want the same thing with the open podcast ecosystem. The only difference is we don't care what app it is.
Right.
We just want you to stay there wherever you happen to be.
So let's talk about the easy stuff. Chapters.
Yeah. So chapters are not unfamiliar with podcasters, but we did a different take on chapters. So the chapters that we created is a JSON schema. It's a JSON chapter format that can live in the cloud somewhere else other than the audio, and the feed can just link to it inside of your episode. The cool thing about that is you can crowdsource your chapters out to somebody else, and we do that on our show. So on the Podcasting 2.0 show every Friday, Adam, when he publishes the show, he just creates a blank chapters file that he uses a product called Hypercatcher Studio. There's other ones. The Sovereign's Feeds developer Stephen Bell, he's working on one now. He's got a good one. Adam will create that blank chapters file, publish it, grab the URL, and stick it in his feed, and then all the apps can see that there is a chapters file here, but there's no chapters yet. Well, then one of the guys who is part of the Podcasting 2.0 project, he volunteered to do our chapters for us. And so he always quickly listens to the episode within usually a couple of hours after we publish. And he just, as he uses the Hypercatcher app to listen to it, and as he's listening, he just tags chapters and gives them a title. Sometimes he'll give them an image or a link or something like that, any metadata that goes through. And by the time he's finished listening to the show, as part of listening, he actually created the chapters file as part of the listening process. And then that's constantly being updated. And by the time he finishes listening, everybody else gets the benefit of now they have a fully formed chapters file. So that means it saves us time during the publishing and editing process, and everybody else can participate in creating chapters.
And that's where you have, like, if you've got that super fan that wants to help, they can do that. And if you want to pay someone, you can do that. But, usually shows have, a handful of super fans and say, hey, will you do the chapters? And here's the info how to do it.
We pay him a portion of our split in our show every week. We pay him 5% of our incoming boosts.
That's
he gets
nice.
that as a cut for the work he does.
That's something that we'll have to talk about sometime, because I don't really understand even how to do a split. Like today we could put you on the split, but it's like, it's not, and it's, it's a geeky thing. It's like, okay, what do I put in where and how? And so that's some stuff that we're kind of scratching our head a little bit about, because some of the stuff it's cool. And if you can figure out how to do it, it makes a lot of sense. It'd be giving him 5% split every time. You hard code that in and he just gets 5%. And because he's supporting.
And you support the back catalog too that way, because you get, every time we have a guest, we put them as a split. And then forever from now on, if anybody ever goes back and listens to that episode, he or she gets that cut of that split.
Right.
There's no, we don't have to go back and figure it out. It's just automatic.
So you've got a slide here that says casualty. So what's the skinny on this?
Oh, causality.
Todd,
that was just.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Good.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this chapter conversation, and that was, Apple has chapters, right? They support it in their ecosystem. How do we help the podcaster kind of like thread that needle between the two ways of doing chapters in podcasting? Just curious.
What we've seen from hosting companies that support the cloud chapters so far is they usually will do it. They do it at the same time. They'll put in, if the listener the podcaster wants to create chapters, they will insert those into the MP3, the audio, and to create the chapters file, in sync.
Okay, so
other.
both then.
Right.
Did they write a parser from that JSON to? Well, the problem is you have to put it in MP3 because the chapters reside. You have to do that at the time of publishing. So you have to. That's pre-work that the host has to do. This is the beauty about this is you don't have to do it while you can get your show out, and the chapters can come later.
Right. Yeah. Those chapters can come later as the you can do it however you want. Our hope is that the other benefit, it may be helpful to talk about it this way. The other benefit of this is that you divorce the chapters from the audio.
Right.
So that the audio format does not have to support natively chapters. You could put chat video chapters in. You could use a WAV file. You could use an MP4. You could use whatever, and it doesn't matter. And you don't have to go rewrite that audio every time if you don't want to.
Yep.
So that this sort of takes that chapter creation out of the audio, so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting of editing that thing every single time.
Instead of only being supported in Apple Podcasts, now you're supported in all the Podcasting 2.0 apps.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it could be the tool that is the master production of the chapters, and it could be added to the MP3, because who knows if Apple's going to support this in the RSS feed, right? It's not part of their namespace.
They will, Rob. They will. I'm bringing the optimism today.
I want to too, but I think Todd and I know the history here. They tend to drive their own agenda, so hopefully we can get them to embrace this. But it's a way for us as podcast hosts to enable a process for creating chapters, and then if that is the only way to get it into Apple, then we can import that data into the media file. So it can go the other way too.
I'm looking at this from a different perspective too. I'm also looking, okay, let's say that Blueberry adds chapter support to our platform.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to figure out, number one, we want to go ahead and support the Podcasting 2.0 apps, but I'm also going to support my own ecosystem. I'm going to have something in my ecosystem that when, just like the closed caption, if someone's going to have chapters, I'm going to adapt it so my player, my web player, can support chapters or whatever functions I have for the content creators. We're going to look at this and bringing as much value to it's, again, not a lot of people, 8-9% of people click and play on a website, but every little bit helps in this adaptation. And because sometimes all it takes is someone to say, oh, look at that. It's like when we introduced time hacks in our show notes, where you could click on a time hack and it jumped the player to that spot. People were like, look at that. And it was a great way for them to do social promotion for a specific clip. Now that's another Podcast 2.0 thing that's available as well, that I wouldn't have to do those notes anymore because there's other functions now. But there's just lots of different ways to skin this thing. And by the way, if anyone's listening to this, no one owns this. Dave and Adam are, what's the best way to say this? Facilitating?
Sherpas.
Sherpas.
We're along for the process and providing guidance and and that kind of thing. I write up the namespace as it is as things are being finalized and formalized, and I'm sort of the maintainer of that side of things. But there's also a separate for just this reason, so that it doesn't look like any one person owns this. There's also a second maintainer of the namespace, and that's James Cridland, and he's another independent voice within podcasting. And so we both have maintainer access on the namespace. And so there's times when we disagree about things, and we talk it out and try to come to, and we say, okay, well, here's what's going on. Somebody wants this, and another person wants this, and there's no benevolent dictator.
Right.
It's very much community driven, and we just maintain it.
Because when we had a whole bunch of namespaces that we made up for our own system, no one adopted them because they were Blueberry namespaces. So and we've talked about that many times in the show. So it's like go Dave and Adam, go, because it's like it's not in my sandbox. So
even if Todd was the second maintainer of the namespace, that's still too much. You have to have independence. It's got to be independent.
That's true. It's true, because everyone has agendas, and we don't like agendas, except for no agenda in the morning. So are you showing in this Podverse app just the chapter marks?
Yeah, that's just an
example.
Demo. Right. Yeah, that's just a demo of how to do some pretty cool stuff with Cloud Chapters, links and images. And there's also something people don't know about Cloud Chapters is it can also hold it's an extensible schema, so it can hold location data as well. We're going to be putting value block stuff in there so that you can have splits at specific chapter markers. Like this can be expanded to hold all kinds of cool stuff.
So if you want to give credit to a news source or to an article or an artist or whatever it may be, you can say, okay, at this point in the show, we're going to do a 5% split for a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
Very,
exactly.
very, very cool. All right, transcripts. This is one I love. This is one that obviously I think has gotten wide adoption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the transcripts is pretty much very simple to understand. It's just a link to a transcript file. The highest fidelity there is going to be an SRT format transcript, but it also supports JSON, VTT, text-based transcripts, even HTML. So, I mean, if you have a transcript, and again, that transcript can live anywhere, the transcript tag is just a link, a URL of where that transcript is. And again, just like chapters, it can start off as just a stub or like a placeholder. And then because transcripts take a while to generate, you can go ahead and you go ahead and publish your show. And then the apps can check each time you go back and start playing the episode. They can check, is the transcript there yet?
Grab it. That's exactly what we do. We put a stub in the database, create a dummy file that basically says transcript is coming. We ship the audio file to the transcription service. They send us back the transcript. We overwrite the file with the transcript, and bam, that way we don't have to update the feed again.
We learned some stuff the hard way with these things because when we first started doing it, we were publishing tags like the chapters tag and the transcript tag, and there wasn't. You publish it with a URL, and the URL wouldn't be populated with a blank file yet. It would just be like a 404 or something.
Oh yeah.
And we found out pretty quickly that a lot of apps will crash. Like we were crashing podcast apps doing this, and so we sort of figured out along the way. Okay, here's the proper way to do it. You publish a blank stub, but then you update it and that kind of thing. So it's been a learning process. Yeah.
And and be honest with you, we didn't listen far back on the Podcasting 2.0 podcast. I've heard that discussion because I was in the team. I was like, what are we gonna do? Because that transcript file takes 3 to 5 minutes to come back. What are we gonna do in the intern? And one of my team is, well, we'll just put a dummy file there with a little bit of text in that says transcript coming soon, and that way it's there. So we figured
that we run with scissors and y'all do things the right way. Is basically what it is.
Well, no, we got lucky. We didn't realize later that we should have done that. But if I'd have been listening to some of the earlier episodes, I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to do. So let's talk about the funding tag.
Yeah, the funding tag is another simple tag. Just a link to a source of funding that you want to send your subscribers to or your patrons. So you go to Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Memberful. It can go back to your own website where you have a Stripe donation page, Subscribestar. There's lots of these services out there. So this is just a simple tag where you can put a URL to your subscriber support site and a text message. Hey, support us if you can.
And some of those apps are actually recognizing that if it's a PayPal or Patreon, and they're actually putting the logo in the app so that they can actually see the associated donation link. Now, this one will take you off the app, obviously, because you're sending them to an external place to donate. But at least you have the option of being able to do that.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple because you can pull up a web view. And that way it drops you back into the app.
Oh, that's smart.
It's not kicking you out. It's keeping you sort of in the app.
So they just
as much as it can.
They do a shell around it like an iframe almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Next one. Oh, yeah, you have the demo here.
Yeah.
So is this where the NFT type of support could live, or is that in the other area around what's it called? Value.
Rob, you know what NFTs are, right? Scams.
Not
So,
well. I think that's the perception now, Todd. But I'm not so sure the technology of it is a scam. But yeah.
well, yeah. Give me all your money, dummy. That's what NFTs are.
Yeah, I think
It's just
I'm
another part of the blockchain type of scenario. Yeah.
I think you could take that. I don't think it really works here. I think it would be a value block thing. The thing about an NFT is they're sort of malleable.
Right.
It's
a fungible
they can
token.
Yeah,
Right.
they can be adapted to do a lot of things. It depends on what you're trying to do. So I mean, like you could have an NFT that expresses this person's identity or something like that, and that could fit into a person tag or something like that. I think it can actually fit into a lot of different places depending on what your use case is. But I think it makes the most sense probably in the value tag though.
If anybody has $1 million, I have a new media show NFT that we will sell you. So,
and it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed to appreciate in value.
no, I will not say that because that's the quickest way to an SEC violation. So,
you don't have to say it. Everybody just assumes it. Right?
Yeah, right. But anyway, back on the funding tag that you see a $sign on the. Which app is this anyway?
This is Cast-O-Matic.
Mm.
And so that icon sort of becomes not grayed out when you have a funding there.
Gotcha.
And you can pop into it.
Go ahead.
The person tag. No, I was just going to talk about the person tag.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person tag is very cool. And it's one thing. There's some of these tags that I'm surprised has not had more adoption. And this is probably the poster child for that. Some of them you're like, okay, look, this is a complicated tag. It's going to take work. We're not, whatever. It's pretty obvious why this is going to take a while to get adoption. The person tag, it is very simple. And I don't know why there has not been more pickup of this.
Yeah, and it's also been something that others in the industry have tried to promote too, like Apple and Podchaser.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And to my knowledge, Podchaser still is not ingesting the person tag.
Really?
And I don't understand that either. So I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they've changed that. But
I thought they were the genesis of this tag. They weren't the one that suggested this tag.
No, I think it was Apple's the one that actually came up with it.
Well, no, I'm talking about the Podcasting 2.0 person tag.
Oh,
they weren't the genesis of this tag. I think that may have been Cridland actually that came up with this tag. But they helped with the podcast taxonomy. So the nature of this tag is as the person's name. This can be any person related to the podcast. Doesn't have to be host, guest, any of that. Just any person that's affiliated with this podcast, their name, a link to their bio if you want to, that's optional. A link to their avatar or picture, again, that's optional, and their role within the podcast. And that role attribute links out to the podcast taxonomy list. So if you want to notate in your podcast who's the guest, who's the host, who's the co-host, the graphic designer, the sound engineer, the producer, the executive producer, anything that's in that podcast taxonomy, and that's where Podchaser helped. Anybody in there can go into that role attribute, so you can get real specific about get credits.
And as example, and Cridland's already done it over in Podland. This is what I was like. This is a no-brainer because we run a directory as well. Why don't we have these? If we implement this, we can roll those right into the directory and show the host and all the people that are supporting the shows. So I think that you're right. This is an easy one. This is code-wise. This is a couple hours. Now
it's simple.
Yeah, it is simple. Getting into interface and all that stuff is takes a little longer. But all right, so location tag.
Yeah, the location tag. It's actually kind of a similar concept to the person tag. It's what is another simple tag, the name of the location or the place that this podcast is about. And there's optionally, you can attach geolocation data to it. So you can attach the longitude, latitude, if it's a real location. It doesn't have to be a real location. Let's just say that, let's say that this podcast is about Narnia or, Hogwarts School of Wizardry. It can be a fictional place, but the idea is that it's the location of the place that the podcast is about, not where it's from. So if you're podcasting from Austin, Texas, I mean,
but
who
it could
cares?
be. Right.
It could be if your podcast was about Austin, Texas,
Right.
Or if you wanted it for some reason to denote that, it could, but it's really intended to help discoverability so that people who are looking for stuff about Austin, Texas can find podcasts about it.
Yeah, I think a good example of what this is doing is being done by platforms like TuneIn, right, where they have radio stations that are located in various cities around the country, and you can find those content sources based on the geolocation. So
that's a good example, Rob. And you could also have there's a app called Maps.fm. That will, use location data to pinpoint, give you geolocation data about podcasts.
Right.
So I think this is a pretty valuable tag. And again, it's one that's pretty low hanging fruit. It's not really hard to implement.
Mm-hmm.
So this one here is, oftentimes people think of podcasting just as, spoken word podcast, but podcast can be PDFs, can be waves, can be videos, and it can be all kinds of different genres.
Okay, why do we need this over the flexibility of the enclosure tag right now?
This doesn't replace the enclosure tag. This does it classifies the medium.
Right. It says the medium tag says, okay, what content should I expect out of this podcast? Is this going to be a podcast, meaning like spoken word? Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be film? Is it going to be an audiobook? Is it going to be music? Is it a blog type textual content? Like, this is meant above and beyond a category is just like, what is the content about? The medium is what is the content type. So you can see in this demo, this is the CurioCaster web podcast app, and it's got a music section. And so when we ingest feeds into the index, we look for the medium tag, and if it's got a medium in it, we extract that out and save it so we can deliver back. If you ask the index API, if you ask it for music podcasts, it will give you back a list of all the podcasts that have a music medium tag listed. And so when the CurioCaster app, like you see in the screenshot, when you flip it to music mode, it becomes a music player app. And so the transcripts are no longer spoken word transcripts. Now they're interpreted as lyrics to songs. The tracks, the episodes are listed as tracks, not as episodes. The podcast becomes an album, not a podcast. So when you see that, depending on what the podcast tags puts in the medium tag, it gives the app a signal as to how to interpret what to expect this content to be. And that's so you can imagine a podcast app that just wants to show you documentary films. Well, if you put in film in the podcast in the podcast medium tag, well, it could do that. So this is a way to give apps the signals they need in order to know how to behave correctly to handle your content.
Does that tag is that tag flexible enough to associate to alternate enclosures?
Well, there's an actual alternate enclosure tag. We just haven't gotten to it yet.
No, but the medium reference. I mean, if you say that this RSS feed is video, but yet down in the alternate enclosure tag, you have an alternate enclosure of video and audio. So how does that map and give a clear signal?
The alternate enclosure tag can live within any medium. So if the podcast is film, and the alternate enclosure holds an Opus file, Opus audio file, then the app can know to fall back to that when the screen goes off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Soundbite tag, pretty simple. It's just a start. It's a reference. The soundbite tag is always a reference to the enclosure, the main enclosure file. And so the soundbite just says, okay, given this enclosure, there's going to be a start time, a duration, and a title or a name for this soundbite. And it's just meant for the creator to say, okay, here's what I think is a really cool soundbite from this episode I just published. And this soundbite starts at this time marker and it lasts for 22 seconds, let's say. And here's a little pithy phrase of what it was about. And lots of different podcast apps will support clips and sound bites and that kind of thing. This lets them suck that data right out of the feed, so they don't have to necessarily crowdsource every clip. Again, this is another real big discoverability thing where
and also I would think maps pretty closely to the potential of chapters too, potentially. It seems like, but it's probably a different duration though.
You know, one thing that we've been challenged with, and we're actually working with our SoundStack partner, is when, some of, like Adam heard a hepatitis C commercial on the show the other day for a vaccine. So when because we're on programmatic, not every episode of the show is someone gets served an ad. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. And when there is one, it causes a problem with the closed caption being offset 30 seconds. And so we're looking for a signal back from, because there's a transaction that happens. Essentially, I serve the media from my CDN when there's no ad in it, and SoundStack serves the media when there is an ad in it. So, it does a round. So I want the ability for SoundStack. I've said, hey, send us a signal when there's going to be no ad on this request. And that way I know what to trigger in the system so that the closed caption stays right, or I offset it 30 seconds.
That's clever. Yeah.
But the problem I'm having is now I'm like, okay, how do I fix this, soundbite? I'm like, now I'm going to break that because, again, so we're thinking about some of this when it comes to trying to integrate with, not a show that's pure value for value. So this is, in my opinion, what we're thinking about right now is part of the hard stuff.
Yeah.
But you guys got your own hard stuff too that you're working on. And probably this one here is, like we were talking about this, I said, I think if when we implement this, we're going to put this in the experimental section of our platform, because unless we integrate with GetAlby or something like that, because it's going to be easier, it's not going to be complicated, but the value for value block is hard.
Yeah, it's hard because then you're getting off the reservation into payment territory and that kind of thing. So, the value block currently supports the Lightning, Bitcoin Lightning infrastructure because that's what we know. It's cheap, it's fast, and it's like, okay, you can't solve every problem, you can't use every cryptocurrency. You got to pick one thing and go with it. And in order to get a system that's up and running. So the value block, we wrote it so that it can support anything. And currently, the developer, one of the developers over at NPR is currently submitting a proposal for using web monetization in that framework with the value block. And so it is flexible enough of a tag to support any payment method you can think of. But we started, and the focus of our development in the index and with Podcast 2.0 is focused on Bitcoin Lightning. And that's where you see, like in these screenshots, you see where it says Sats. That's a Satoshi, and people are familiar with this terminology a lot now. The Satoshi is a fragment of a Bitcoin, and so the idea here is the value tag. You put this into your feed or into your episode, and it says, okay, here's a list of addresses. Here's a list of wallet addresses. And for each one of these addresses, here's a percentage of the total of a payment that goes to each address. And then it just says which currency to use. So in this particular, in most cases, 99% of the time now, it's going to be Bitcoin or Lightning. And so that when the app sees that it's ready to send, that it needs to send a payment, you say, you've decided as the listener, I'm going to send 25,000 sats to Todd and Rob to the New Media Show. It looks at your value block, sees all the different addresses in there and which percentages of how much goes to which one, splits the payments up and sends those payments out. It's pretty much that simple. Now, it's easy to describe. It's difficult to implement.
Yeah.
So but that's the concept there. And if you can split this up 5 different ways, like somebody did it the other day. Kyron from the Mere Mortals podcast, he put like 25 splits in there just as getting crazy trying to see if he could break stuff, and it worked. It sent 25 different payments out to 25 different wallets.
I think it's important too for people to understand why, because if I ask for PayPal donation, they take 5%, right? And someone's gonna have to send me $25 to make that PayPal donation worth it. You're not going to send a $2 PayPal donation because they're going to eat 50 cents of that donation just in processing fees. Whereas there's some processing fees, there's some overhead in Satoshis, but at the same time, that's handled in the transaction, and we get actually, when someone sends me 25,000 sats, like today, we received 1,111 sats from Relaxed Mail. He said, hey, it's the pod sage. Todd and Rob joined the show. So we got 1,111 sats, but it costs a little more than that to send that to us. But we got the value that he wanted to send to us.
Yeah, there's a few different things that are the concepts here of why this is built the way it's built. Number one is never leave the app.
Yep.
So it reduces the friction down to nothing. There's literally a button on the app that says boost. So I can tap that button. I can type in 25,000, type in a little message and hit send. And I've never left the podcast app. So that's the first thing. The next thing is there's nobody in between the listener and you. It's literally a direct payment that gets sent from the app to your wallet. Nobody's in between there, so there's no censorship, there's no deplatforming. It's a direct financial relationship with you and the listener. I'd say the other thing is that it allows you to have this direct sort of feedback mechanism where because you can get messages, because you can send messages within the payments as well, it makes you feel connected to your audience in a way that's a little round robin. If you have to, I got to remember, after the show, I'm going to go and get on PayPal and send this donation note, and I got to remember what this part of the program was that I was going to comment on. It reduces all that friction down to nothing. You can hit pause, hit the boost button, done.
Dave, we're coming up on an hour and a half. I want to be respectful of your time because I know that you often do these during your lunch hour and you take a little extended lunch hour. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to, if you've got to go, let us know. But
I'm on a roll, man. I can't be stopped.
Okay, so awesome.
Okay.
So
I wanted to ask another question on this too. To get the listening apps to support this, right? Do you expect them wanting a cut?
Yeah, they get a cut.
Absolutely.
It's just not shown here in the
absolutely.
The
that was one. Thank you for bringing that up, Rob, because that's one of the critical parts of this is that everybody in the chain needs to get a piece of the action, because the hosting companies have built successful businesses. Many podcasters have built successful businesses, and then there's third parties making money off advertising. Lots of people make money within the podcast ecosystem. The ones that have been the hardest to monetize are the podcast apps. Those guys hardly get anything. And from day one, we said, okay, this has to change. The podcast app, if we're bringing all these features and they're doing tons of development work and they're doing all this hard work, podcasting wouldn't exist without these podcast apps, and they're getting pennies on the dollar. We need to get, 99 cents in an app store. We need to change this where they can get a piece of that action. And we encourage them, like, hey, figure out whatever percentage it is you need. If it's, 2, 3, 5, 7%, whatever, be sure and take a cut and just be honest, be transparent about what the cut is, and just take the cut, because you have to get paid too.
And this is a problem that we've had for many, many years. There was a couple of initiatives that were done, and I kept telling people that were in these initiatives, you haven't incentivized it for the podcast app developers. They are not going to do this. They're going to show you the bird, and you're going to have no adoption success.
Right.
And this changes that completely. Now, I think it's going to take some time to get this value for value piece, especially when it comes to Satoshis and people understanding this. But if we can get this rolling and educate people, then this, in my opinion, is a big part of a game changer. A small content creator is not going to have to worry about taking a cut. If you don't quit thinking about Satoshis as an investment vehicle, think about you deposit some money, you get some Satoshis, you get some crypto. That then is just a number. Let's say you have 100,000 sats. Don't worry about what that value is. Then when you send 10,000 sats to somebody, it's a donation that's going to change in value, but you've sent them 10,000 sats. It's not anything about investment. It's about the token amount of money that you're sending over that podcaster can then truly cash out, take out of their wallet, and turn into hard dollars and cents. The value is going to change when they cash it out. But this, to me, makes the most sense, where I don't have to pay PayPal or Patreon or any of these other knuckleheads a cut.
So is Apple gonna expect a cut of this?
Apple's not going to do this.
No. But because there's a transaction happening that's going to the app owner.
If Apple introduced this in Apple Podcasts, absolutely.
The platforms have been very hands off when it comes to crypto in general.
Oh, they
crypto
have
wallets and kind of thing. Yeah, definitely. But and the reason is because the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not classified as currency.
Right.
These are not financial. These are not actual currency transactions that are going on by legally.
It's almost like a rewards program kind of concept, right? It's not really money.
That's
what you're saying.
It's not money to them. Yeah, it's something else. And so they've been very hands off, which has been great, because it's allowed this experimentation in this mad science laboratory to go, and there's really not been any problem there. It's been great. It's been a way to, like you said, Todd, I mean, you don't have to buy into Bitcoin maximalism or any of this kind of stuff. You don't have to be a zealot. You can simply treat this as a simple financial, simple transaction. You spin up a wallet, and then you just convert it back to dollars if you want to, or whatever your local currency is. You don't have to be a zealot about it. No.
And the way I look at it is, if you're going to make a cash donation, I would much rather you send it this way than for me to lose the percentage of money I'm going to lose through the PayPal transaction or whatever it may be. Now, if you want to send me a check, that's cool. We'll deposit that. But when's the last time somebody wrote a check? And that takes, like, you have to stop, write the check in an envelope, get a stamp. There's too much friction there. It's just easy. Click, bing, and you're done.
Still, a lot of people take checks, Todd. I write checks all the time.
The only people that write checks are the old dude in front of you at the grocery store.
Right.
When you're in a hurry.
Yeah, that's true.
Certainly not at any big retailer, but yeah.
This next one's hard, but could be such a game changer if everyone adopted it.
So, and there's some recent news on that as well, because WordPress, there's a WordPress plugin that's based on ActivityPub. So let's, real quick, Cross-App Comments functions based on the podcast social interact tag. And the social interact tag just specifies a location, which is a URI or URL, to a root post, and that root post can just live somewhere on the internet. And it also specifies what protocol to use, whether that's ActivityPub, Twitter, etc. So the idea here is that as long as the app knows what protocol it's speaking and where to go find the sort of root of this comment thread, that's all it needs. It can go it can go sort of hook into the root of this post, of this thread, and pick up the conversation. It can read the comments, and if it speaks the protocol that's being specified, it can post back to it. So that could be Twitter or ActivityPub. ActivityPub is what we have pushed and prefer just because it's open and we're open, and it's a very well worn open protocol at this standpoint. Is what Mastodon runs on. It's Castopod. The Castopod guys speak it natively. So now WordPress, there's this really nice WordPress plugin that has ActivityPub support, where you can add ActivityPub support to your WordPress site. That's now about to get the ability to do replies. So that means replies from the outside world.
Awesome.
So this could be a thing where something like PowerPress can hook into the native ActivityPub protocol there and just publish a root post and be able to accept interactive comments back and forth. You can see there's a screenshot there where you have this is Podverse, and it's showing the comment flow within the app there, and that's purely coming from the feed. That's coming from what Podverse is doing is it's seeing that root post specified in the feed, and it's going out and grabbing it and displaying the comments. And other apps like Podfriend does this as well. Another web app, Podfriend, will go out and it will show. You'll see the identical comment list. Everything is the same across apps. There's no more siloing of comments.
That's keeping people in the app, allowing them to reply, allowing them to interact across multiple apps, and building community where you don't have to look at Twitter, you don't have to look at Facebook, you don't have to look at YouTube, you don't have to look 5 different places, and the conversation is right there. So to me,
if you decide your listeners are not angry enough, you can throw a Twitter thread in there and make them really pissed off, make their life miserable.
And of course, the tag that has probably me the most excited is the lit tag, and I can't wait to light new media show up. It's coming.
So the live stream tag, again, is fairly, a lot of these tags are pretty simple in concept. The live item tag just says it structurally looks just like an item.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a title, it's got an enclosure, it's got a description, it's got an image. If you look at it, you are looking at an item, a standard RSS 2.0 item tag. The only difference is that the live item takes some extra attributes. You get a start time, when it's going to go live. You have an end time, optional, when is it going to end. And you're going to have where is the video, you have where is the video or audio stream, which it should be in the enclosure or the alternate enclosure, and also a status. And I think I left that out of this slide, but there's a status attribute, and the status is either pending, live, or ended. And so that's part of that feed is the source of truth. The app's going to go check the feed to say what status is this, because just because the stream says it's going to go live at 10:35 p.m. Well, technical things happen, glitches happen. It could be 10:45, it could be 10 minutes late starting. Well, if the live item status attributes doesn't say live, it hasn't started yet. And you can see, you're showing the screenshot now of these are two different apps. This CurioCaster on the left and Podverse on the right, both showing this same live item coming from the feed, and is saying that this live stream is now ongoing. It's started.
And the beauty is you can do an audio stream, you can do a video stream. You put basically what And if the app supports it, they would click that live, and they're going to see, just like you see on the website or on Facebook, you're going to see this live stream right in the app, or
That's
listen
right.
to the live stream right in the app.
So where does the metadata come from for the image and the text description and stuff? Is that built into the link that you get?
It's right there in the live item. So if you envision what an XML item tag, standard item tag looks like, Rob.
Oh, okay. Got it.
The live item looks exactly like it, except it's got those extra attributes in the tag itself.
Yeah. And
it's easy to parse.
And because it's at the upper level, it basically doesn't touch anything in your normal podcast feed. It comes in as a new block or a channel. I don't know what level it comes in as. It comes as an item, or does it come as a channel?
It's in the channel. It's a child of the channel.
Child of the channel. And so it drops in there, and then as soon as you're done, whatever software you're using has to pull it out, and then it goes back to normal and takes you essentially offline.
Right. So you have, this is where, and we talked about this earlier, this is where PodPing comes back into play.
Yep.
Because what you need with something like a live stream is, because the timing is so flaky, you can know roughly what time it's going to start, but you can't know exactly. And even the host can't know, because there can be problems. So what you need is a notification service. And that's what PodPing is. PodPing is a notification service. So if you're watching the PodPing stream, the PodPing blockchain, we can send a special PodPing with what's called a reason code. And the reason code can be live or ended. And so when you see that feed URL come through, and the status, the reason code of live, when you see that come through the blockchain on PodPing, then the app knows, hey, go check the XML again, because something probably changed. And when they go and reparse the XML feed and see that the status has changed to live in the live item, then they know, okay, boom, live stream's on. And now we can send push notifications to our listeners saying that their favorite podcast just went live. And that's what Podverse is doing right now. They started a few weeks ago. And every time we go live, every Friday at noon at 12:30, we send out the ping. Podverse sends out a push notification to all of its listeners. They subscribe to us. Flip. Done.
And if you think about where we're headed, Robbie, you and I have been doing live for 10 years. And our time kind of changes. If you get a little late, or if I have problems with the stream or whatever, something, it's 3 o'clock to 3:10, before we get the thing up and going. But if I know we're up and running and I push the trigger, and basically then that'll send the notification. Or if I do a 2 minutes prior, a 2-minute warning, and to get everyone, kind of a little time to come in, it's this is a game changer from an interactivity standpoint, because again, we're keeping the listener right in the app. And guess what else they can do during watching it live? They can boost. They can send a donation while they're live. They see something they like, bing, they hit it. And you guys just heard earlier a boost that come in, pew, on the stream. That is, and we're not lit. People are having to come over and watch the live stream or listen to the audio. But this is, in my opinion, it really allows how the podcasting space is moving. It gives those folks that are going to go and do live, either audio stream or a video stream, the ability to at least send the bat signal out and say, hey, we're up and running. And I don't have to realize on someone, Todd's going to be live at 3 o'clock on Facebook. I don't have to, they get the thing that we want them to get. No one else is doing this. No one. You go on YouTube, maybe if you subscribe to a channel, you might get an announcement. I don't know. But.
So does that tag basically enclose one of the alternate enclosures that links to the media file?
It can. So because it's just a renamed standard item, it can hold every tag that a standard item tag can. So the alternate enclosure tag can certainly be one of those. And the alternate enclosure is important for things like live item, because if you're on the road, you may have bandwidth problems. Your app may choose to flip down to a low bandwidth version. So you can give alternate enclosures and the alternate enclosure specification is very robust. I mean, it's a heavy spec,
Right.
but you can specify audio, different bit rates, video streams, HLS. You can specify all different sorts of bandwidth and capability streams, so that the app can say, "Oh, okay, you just turned the screen off on this video podcast that's live. I'll flip back to the audio because that's going to be a lot less drain on the battery and a lot better for bandwidth." Or you looks like you're going through a congestion area. I'm going to flip that down to the Opus audio or whatever. And that's because the live item can support that and any other tag, just like a regular item can. You can drop an alternate enclosure in there, and that's probably going to become pretty important as this thing matures.
I think and we've just went through a whole bunch of stuff here, and Dave did this presentation in like 15 minutes, and we've taken over an hour to go through this. And
This is the way it should have been done, probably.
And I think here is the crux, Rob. You said it when we began the show. There's lots of naysayers out there that are, RSS is dead. Well,
This proves it. It's not.
You look at the bevy of people that are. There's a huge ecosystem of developers, companies. You've got Dave and Adam kind of steering the wagon here, and yet they said, "Hey, here's what's been collected by the community. Here's the idea. Here's the approved specs. Go build it. Do what you want to do with this." And this is why I had a mindset change where I was like, "Oh man, I could have built for 97%." And I said, no. It's happened maybe around time podcast movement or sometime in there. I said, no, I got to change my thinking. If we don't build this as the hosting provider and put these functions into the platform, and I dump 80,000 feeds into the system with Podcast 2.0 support, then the app developers, not only the app developers, the listeners can start saying, "Hey, how come you haven't put this feature into Pocket Cast or Overcast or whatever it may be," and apply pressure. I'm telling all my audience members, go use a new podcasting app, a new podcasting 2.0 app. I'm saying shift. And it's taken 2 months, but now I'm starting to actually see my listeners starting to listen, specifically on Fountain. And because they can earn some Satoshis by listening, they're donating those back to the show. It's taken some time, but I'm telling them, this is where I want you to listen to the show. Mm-hmm. Because, and of course, there's other apps, Podverse and these other apps have done great things. But the main thing was, I want them to, I want to change a behavior. So as a host, a podcaster, I'm making my audience know this is an option. And at the same time, as a hosting provider, I'm saying, okay, we're going to implement these things so that we can feed it. We got to feed it from both ends. And if we do this, the work that Dave and Adam have done over the past 2 years, which has been like this slow crawl up the hill, we can turn this thing into an avalanche and really change the space. And this is just because what are you guys working on now? I know you guys have like a stack of stuff. This is just like, is this V1? What we just talked about, or
that represents, so these tags that we just went through represent we do the namespace in phases. So we open up a phase. So we did phase 1, and then once we get consensus on a group of tags that everybody feels comfortable with, and it gets reviewed and things, then we close that phase and formally adopt them into the namespace. So then we've been through phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think what you see here represents phases 1 through 4 mostly, and then phase 5 had an extra couple of things in it. We're about to open up phase 6, and that's going to have the freeform text record tag that we were talking about earlier. It's going to have that in it. It's going to have hopefully something called a remote item, and this is going to be an interesting tag because you can you can create a feed that references items in other feeds. So this is for like creating playlists within RSS, which is something that people have always wanted to do. And so you end up with this weird, terrible sort of thing where people have synthetic feeds that are like, they're feeds that are made up of enclosures from other feeds. And it's like, it's all gross. Well, this is a way for you to have references to other other items, other episodes of other feeds, without having to suck in their audio and all that kind of stuff. You can just have a link to them. So
it could be like a feed drop kind of a concept. Right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. A feed drop without having to do the weird thing where you hijack somebody else's feed.
Right.
Which causes all kinds of chaos within aggregators. Yeah.
You know, I just want to put it out there as a challenge. There's a lot of people that listen to this show that have never emailed us, never texted us, never had a comment about the show. You're sitting out there silently listening. And some of you have the power within your companies to move this agenda forward so that we can help podcasters grow and expand the space. I'm moving forward. And if you don't want to move forward with Buzzsprout and with RSS.com and all the other players that are out there that are adopting this, see ya. We're going to continue to go and move this forward, because RSS, in my opinion, is the last bastion of free speech, and we're going to protect it. It's like, that Second Amendment, take my gun out of my hand, dying hands type of thing. It's going to be the same thing with RSS. So we have a huge opportunity here to move the space and help creators. I've got an agenda. The agenda I have is to make sure more people use Blueberry Podcasting. That's for doggone sure. But at the same time, my heart is with creators to help them grow. So guess what? Again, agenda, make sure they're successful so they continue to pay their hosting bill. Now,
anytime you have something new, Todd, that, it's not, everybody knows this. Anytime you develop a new feature or a spec or a protocol or anything like that, there's always chicken and egg problem.
Yep, that's right.
There's a chicken and egg problem, and you have to deal with it. Well, the way that we're dealing with it is through the hosting companies, because podcast apps, here's the thing. Podcast apps, they thrive on features. They sell their product based on features and what they can give their listeners. And in order to sell subscriptions or purchases of their podcast app, in order for them to monetize, they need a consistent fire hose of new features they can give their listeners. Well, they can't give those features to them if there's no content that supports the features. But that's an interesting issue, though, because the hosting companies already know if they can build the feature in, they have a ready audience in the podcast apps that are waiting in the wing, ready to implement these features. So that's how you break the chicken and egg.
That's
the
right.
Hosting companies can build a feature into their feeds knowing that there's a ready audience willing to push it forward in the apps. So you're not building purely based on a rampant speculation. You're building knowing that developers love to develop, and they have to develop in order to sell their product.
And some are saying, well, Apple's not going to do this. Well, Spotify is not going to do this. I don't care. I don't care if they adopt any of this, to be frank.
Well, we have no control over them.
Well, I don't even care.
Right.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best ability to educate creators. This is why you should be recommending Fountain, Podverse, Casio. This is why you should be recommending these apps to your listeners. And yeah, it's going to take time. We'll celebrate when we get one of these apps to 1% of market share, but and when listeners start finding this stuff through the podcasters, they're going to be like, holy crap, how come this hasn't been here before? I do want to take just a second, though. Adam Curry sent us another 50,000 sats. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the positive forward motion on 2.0. You're absolutely welcome. 1,000 sats from Lehman. And Andy, thank you again for what you've done with with your WordPress app that you've got. He says, I ripped the audio off Todd saying boost and send it to Dave for them to use on the Podcasting 2.0 show. Okay, I look forward to hearing that.
Is that licensable? Do we need to pay a royalty, Todd?
No. again, for those of you who just wanted to hear the pew pew, thank you so much for your boost. So,
Todd, I did hear at Podcast Movement, to kind of riff a little bit off of what you were saying. The content creators are asking for this.
Yes, they are.
So it isn't like, I think the hosting platforms are the glue that can make this work. Because we have to offer the functionality that then the content creator can use, and then that functionality exists for the app developers, the listening app developers, to add to their platform. So if it's not there with the hosts, then obviously ecosystem doesn't work.
I'm just one person, but if I enable this for 80,000 podcasters, and we hit them with information, say go do this, this, and this. And why?
And there is a couple of listening apps that are supporting it right now. So there is a market for it for the whole ecosystem.
But when you get 80, 100, 200, 300,000 content creators all of a sudden starting to use these tags,
then it becomes more attractive to listening apps.
It becomes much, when Dave can report during the board reading, hey, we're up to, 135,000 or 155,000, whatever the number is, of apps that have Podcasting 2.0. There you go, Dan, you got another quarter. Tags, then that's movement.
It's already beyond that, Todd.
Good.
It's already more than that. It's well more than that. So by the end of the year, just based on you just brought on a bunch of feeds with Podping. There's by the end of the year we're looking at going to be close to 500,000 feeds that declare the Podcasting 2.0 namespace in some form or fashion. So that means they support at least one tag, and it's going to be well over 400,000 feeds that are sending out pod pings. The adoption's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's crossed whatever that curve is. It's crossed that. So the real issue now is, I wrote a blog post about this a few months ago called Podcasting 2.0 is just the future, and it's a vision on how to get there. And I think it helps when you think about some of these tags that we talked about, like you imagine a live stream right in the app with variable audio video quality. You're able to, in the app, send money directly to the creator with messages and comments built right into the app. All this stuff right into every podcast app. That is a YouTube super chat level experience.
And you
don't
don't
not siloed
on an open
every
platform.
Single free app.
And I don't have to have 1 million listener hours on YouTube to get super chat.
That's right. And that means your customer doesn't have to leave Blueberry to go over to YouTube to get that experience. They can stay right on your platform and get that same level of experience.
Right.
We don't care where they listen. We want them to listen, but we want them to listen now on Podcasting 2.0 apps.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
that's, and we can ask nicely, and then you can miss the fun. It's when we become lit, you can pew pew the show and get your little chuckles of scaring me and Rob when the pew pew comes in. And this is fun. To me, this is the most fun I've had with my clothes on it in a long, long time. It really is. I'm a nerd at heart, so I geek out on this stuff, and I'm taking it very seriously. And I hope the rest of the people...
This is how podcasting started, right?
Yeah.
The same spirit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's bringing back the 90s internet.
Well, we don't want to go there. No, we don't want to go there.
Parts, Todd.
The 90s internet.
Yeah.
Not ISDN. We're not bringing back ISDN. We're bringing back the good parts.
Right. Some things just need to stay in the past, but
that's right.
So we have taken way more than your time, Dave. What's obviously the podcastindex.org is the place, and of course there's the GitHub link and all that. But if people want to reach out to you directly, what's the best way?
Dave at podcastindex.org is my email address. Anybody can ping me and hit me up for anything, anytime. I'm always strive to be responsive and make myself available. If developers want to get involved, the best place for that is podcastindex.social. That's our Mastodon. Request an invite. It's closed because we don't want to deal with spammers. But just request an invite. We'll shoot you one and get in there and join the party. It's very welcoming. Lots of developer chat, lots of geeky nerd chat all the time. It's a great place to be.
I feel like I'm watching a specific episode from Battlestar Galactica or something like that.
Adam said 50,000 sats. Take your shirt off, hottie. No.
There you go, take it
Was
off.
that Adam who sent that?
Adam sent it. So no, we're not taking no shirt off. But in all honesty, though, too, make sure you get subscribed to the Podcasting 2.0 podcasts.
That's right. We have a show, don't we?
Yeah, you have a show, and some knucklehead put it in Apple Podcasts. You guys didn't do that, but I heard on the last show someone submitted it. So do the right thing. Subscribe manually to that show. Right
click your feed, paste it in the thing.
But if you're a listener of this show, we'd love to hear your feedback on this too. And if this made you have a mind shift, please let us know. But again, Dave, thanks for taking the time. I'm sure there's something I forget to say here. But yeah, all the boosts that came in today, everyone appreciate that. But
thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on. It was great fun.
We need to get out of here. I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as well. At Rob Greenlee, and I can be found in email too. If you want to send it to me, rob.greenlee@gmail.com. That's a great way to reach out to me as well.
And of course, for everyone else, go podcasting. Everyone take care. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.